very honored to have him with us. He's a great human rights champion, escaped slavery as a child. He is a former champion swimmer on Sudan's national team. Now, for many years, an American citizen, a Christian, and also a Zionist. We're so delighted to have you, Simon. To give viewers a little context, you were enslaved as a child against the backdrop of a civil war in Sudan between a radical Islamist government in the north and the south, which is mostly Christian and animist, or people who practice native religions. And I think few Americans know that from the 1950s through the 80s, I believe, millions of Southern Sudanese were murdered by this radical Islamist government, the same government that sheltered Osama bin Laden in the 1990s, that perpetrated the Darfur genocide more recently. To give viewers a little sense of your recent activities, in 2006 you conducted a historic freedom walk from the United Nations to the Capitol in Washington to protest the genocide in Darfur, and in 2011 another historic freedom walk to advocate for the independence of your people, the Christians and others in Southern Sudan. Simon, I thought I would start by asking you about your Zionism and your activism on behalf of Israel. Where have you been recently, and how do you speak to people about Israel?
Okay. Thank you very much, and thank you for having me here. First of all, before I touch my support or the support of my people to the state of Israel, let me join people of Israel at the time that when we are mourning the death of the founding father, one of the founding father of the state of Israel, Sharon. Israel lost a father, and we in Southern Sudan, we lost a friend. The reason I said that, at the time when the world was not even seeing Southern Sudan that they have a case, it was General Sharon that looked at it, and he was the one who reached out and give support to the Southern Sudanese who fought the war. Yes,
Sharon. I know he was interested in Africa, but
for the records. And even at the moment we're speaking, there is the leader of Anyanya once, Joseph Lago, who is still alive. Anybody in Israel can go and verify that, because he was the first Southernist who went underground and visited Israel ever.
Really? So this is a leader in Southern Sudan who visited Israel. What time?
The one it was in 60s.
The 1960s. He worked with Ariel Sharon.
He and this man is still alive today. The leader of the former Anyanya movement, the first group who fought oppression from Khartoum, and who is still alive.
And Khartoum is the northern Sudanese, a very radical Islamist government. So Sharon and he worked together in the 1960s.
Sharon, as a general, he gives support to the Southern Sudanese freedom fighters.
Really?
Yes.
I don't know that many
most people
are
not aware of it, and few knows. That being said, when it comes to my support to the state of Israel, it's not only me, it is the Southern Sudanese in generals. To the point that I always urge everybody that don't take what I said. Visit Southern Sudan as a country, as an independent nation now, and then verify it by yourself.
Since 2011, yes, Southern Sudan is independent.
And you will be surprised, and especially to my fellow Jewish community in general, they will be surprised that in the continents of Africa in all, there is one tiny groups who happen to be committed 100% to the support of the state of Israel. And that happened to be the Southern Sudanese. And I went to South Africa because South Africa did emerge now as a ground to launch a lie on Israel's by using a word
apartheid,
knowing that word itself,
yeah,
when you took it to Southern African, especially the black Southern African, of course they hate that word.
Of course.
And anybody who is involved in apartheid, of course, the South African will join hands because they fought to defeat apartheid.
Yes.
And Southern Africa was being targeted by those who have propaganda, which is started in Canada. I think it was in Toronto 7 years ago or 8 years ago.
Is this part of the BDS movement?
I don't know, but the whole thing that Israel has an apartheid, you said it comes from Canada. And now they went to Southern Africa, knowing that the majority of Southern Africa will jump. And indeed, this thing is taking ground in Southern Africa. If they win Southern Africa the way they are doing today, of course it will be easy for the other African to go just blindly without even knowing. I was in Cape Town, and I was shocked to see youth Southern Africa who are angry about apartheid. And the
Israel, this imagined.
Yeah, they are just rising up with madness.
Talking about Israel.
About Israel, there's an apartheid still.
Isn't
and
that
I talked to them whether they know.
What did you tell them?
Whether they know the political ramifications of what is between the Jewish peoples and the Palestinian people. Nobody knows anything.
What do you tell them? How do you
I was telling them
respond to that when they say Israel's racist?
Of course it is a lie. And I have to justify why it is a lie.
What do you tell them?
The lie which I said it is a lie was not only said by me. It was said by the very people who fought the war, who was being dragged into this war of lie on the issue of Palestinians. I'm talking about Jordanians. I'm talking about Egyptians. It was Anwar Sadat, when he decided that his kids will not go on dying on base of lie. Peace have to be made with Israel.
Okay, I gotcha. And I know that there was some controversy, and personally I didn't agree with the last chapter of the way the Israeli government handled this. The Southern Sudanese in Israel were deported about a year and a half ago, or over the past couple of years. But they had been given refuge for some years in Israel prior to that, after horrendous mistreatment in Egypt. And what are attitudes like now? You've spoken of the Southern Sudanese as loving Israel. Do they still, or is there any bitterness about the deportations?
Well, the deportations, in my opinion, I don't call it deportation. I can call it repatriations. Because I myself, when I appeals to the government of Israel on their behalf, I did make it very clear to the government of Israel that let these people stay until 2011. And then 2011, we will figure out whether the Southern Sudanese will go on voted for the stay under the Islamization and Arabizations. And under the demonization, after 3.5 million of their fellows were being slaughtered.
Yes.
Or they will vote for freedom.
I see. So when Southern Sudan became independent,
so
you were okay.
So the Southern Sudan became independent. And indeed for them, they are no longer refugees.
I see.
They have a country need to be built, and it have to be built by them.
Last question I had for you, Simon, is you're an American citizen, but also by birth a native son of Africa. I wondered, both as an American and a former native son of Africa, what you thought about Mandela and his legacy. And he passed last month. Any thoughts?
Mandela set an example to the world. The example that being led by people like Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr.
Yes.
Mandela set an example which is that you can be a victim, but at the same time, you can be a hero to reach to those who victimize you and assure them that you forgive them.
Yes, great.
So, If it was not Mandela, South Africa wouldn't be the way it is today.
Wouldn't have been able to transition peacefully.
An example, and that is why we saw the whole world, even those who was against him, those who used to spit on him, calling him as a terrorist, calling him as a radical. He is not a radical. In fact, if he is a radical of equality.
Yes.
And his legacy will live on, not to Southern Africa, but to the whole world. That you can be a victim at the same time. You can reach out to people who victimize you, and you can change their mind and their heart, and we join hands for the future and the better of tomorrow.
Thank you, Simon. Thanks for being with us. An honor.